Hello and welcome to the channel Echoes Shadows. Get ready to uncover the darkest side of Walmart. In this video, we'll share 5 chilling stories from employees, from unexplained events to terrifying encounters that will keep you up at night. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming stories. Thank you very much. Story 1. The Supernatural Shift.
My name is Jake, I'm 27, and I live in Riverside, California. I've been working at the Walmart on Main Street for about 3 years now. The job is pretty routine. Customers coming and going, stocking shelves, organizing inventory. But one night, something happened that I'll never forget. Even now, just thinking about it gives me chills. It was a Tuesday during my night shift. The store was almost empty, around 10 o'clock. I was in the produce section, stacking boxes of fruits and vegetables. Everything seemed normal until I felt a cold breeze. It was strange, really strange. The store is fully enclosed, and even with the air conditioning on, that chill didn't make any sense. I tried to brush it off, but soon after, the entire place went silent. The background music that always plays just stopped. I kept working, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I looked over my shoulder a few times, but no one was there. I walked over to the drinks aisle and saw Mike, one of my coworkers. I asked, "Hey Mike, you feel something weird going on?" He just laughed and told me I was probably tired, but I couldn't get rid of the uneasy feeling. I went back to my section, and out of nowhere, I heard a loud crash, like something heavy had fallen. I rushed over to the frozen food aisle and saw trays of meat scattered across the floor. I started picking them up, but that cold breeze hit me again. This time I heard a whisper right next to my ear, but I couldn't make out the words. My heart started racing, and I jumped back in fear. The lights began flickering. I tried to calm myself down, but the feeling that something was wrong only grew stronger. I decided to head toward the stockroom, where the staff usually gathered. But as I walked, the lights went out completely. Everything was dark, except for the emergency lights flickering now and then. That's when the shelves started shaking, and I saw a shadow dart between the boxes. I froze. I wanted to move, but my legs wouldn't respond. Suddenly, a box was thrown against the wall, smashing open and sending fruit everywhere. The noise was so loud it made my head spin. When I finally managed to move, I started running. Objects were flying off the shelves, and it felt like something was chasing me. Then I saw her. At the end of the aisle, a figure appeared. It looked like a woman, dressed all in black, with her face covered. She wasn't walking. She seemed to be floating toward me, and as she got closer, the shelves around her started falling. I tried to run, but my legs felt like they were stuck in place, like something was pulling me down. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and she disappeared. The weight on my chest lifted, but I knew I wasn't alone. Something rushed past me, and I felt a cold hand on my neck. It was like someone was squeezing me, but there was no one there. I dropped to my knees, struggling to breathe, as whispers echoed all around me, voices I couldn't understand. Finally, the lights came back on, and the grip on my neck disappeared. I got up, still shaking, and ran to the break room, where I knew some coworkers would be. When I got there, Kelly was sitting on her phone, totally relaxed, like nothing had happened. Out of breath, I asked, "You didn't see anything weird, Kelly?" She looked at me confused and said, "Everything was normal." I left the store that night without even changing out of my uniform. To this day, I don't know what really happened, whether it was just my imagination or something more, but one thing's for sure. I'm never working the night shift at that Walmart again. Never.
Story 2. The Car.
My name is Mark, and I work as a janitor at a Walmart in Kansas City. I live in a quiet neighborhood called Northland. I've been on the night shift for about 3 years now. It's a simple routine, cleaning up when the store closes and everything goes quiet. Nothing strange had ever happened until that one night. It was a regular Tuesday night. My shift started at 10 p.m. The crew was small that night, just me and Mike, the security guard. He was watching the cameras in the back while I was mopping the floors. The store was dead silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy. Around midnight, when I was cleaning near the dairy section, I felt like someone was watching me. You know that creepy feeling, right? I looked around, but obviously there was no one there. The store had been closed for hours. I tried to shake it off and keep working, but then I heard a noise like something falling over in the electronics department, all the way on the other side of the store. I stopped listening for it again, but everything went quiet. I figured maybe something fell off a shelf. It happens. But then I started hearing footsteps. Soft, almost like someone was walking barefoot down the next aisle. That's when I really started to feel uneasy. I called out, "Hey Mike, you there?" No answer. I decided to check out the noise over in electronics. When I got there, one of the TVs was on. The thing was just showing static, that black and white fuzz. I was sure I had turned everything off before starting my shift. The lights in the store began flickering, and the air felt thick, like it was hard to breathe. Then, I felt this icy wind brush past me, even though the doors were all locked. But the worst part was in the toy aisle. Right in the middle of the aisle, there was a remote control car moving on its own. The remote was lying on the floor a few feet away, untouched. The car was moving slowly, forward and backward, like someone was playing with it. My heart was pounding. As I walked toward the car, I suddenly heard a voice. A soft, childlike voice, almost a whisper. "Do you want to play with me?" I froze. My body wouldn't move. The voice felt like it was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "Do you want to play with me?" it said again. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even speak. It was like I was stuck in place. Somehow, I snapped out of it and bolted to the back room where Mike was asleep. I shook him awake, trying to explain what just happened, but I was so shaken up, I could barely get the words out. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. He grabbed his flashlight, and we walked back to the toy aisle together. But of course, the car was gone. Everything was back to normal. The TV and electronics was off again. Mike chuckled and told me I probably needed a break, that I was just imagining things. I went home that night with the feeling that something was still watching me. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice again. "Do you want to play with me?" I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I requested a transfer to the day shift. I haven't worked nights at that Walmart since. I don't know what happened that night, but I'll never ignore that feeling of something being off around me ever again.
Story 3. Prisoner in the Cold.
My name is Jack, and I've been working as a butcher at a Walmart in Denver, Colorado, for over 5 years now. I've always been around meat, ever since I was a kid, helping my uncle in his butcher shop. So when I landed this job, I felt right at home. The store is huge, and the butcher section is tucked away in the back, a bit isolated from the rest of the place. During the day, it's busy, but at night, when the store closes, things change. It was a Friday night, just about closing time. My shift was over, but I had forgotten to store a few cuts of meat in the freezer. I figured it would be quick, so I decided to go by myself. The Walmart freezer is massive, like a cold room with metal shelves full of hanging meat, and the silence inside is unsettling, broken only by the hum of the fans. I went in, locked the door behind me like always, and started stacking the cuts on the shelves. But after a few minutes in there, I felt something off. A chill that wasn't just the cold of the freezer. It was like a cold draft moving right through me. I turned around fast, thinking maybe someone had come in to mess with me, but there was no one, just the fans humming. I tried to brush it off and keep working, but then I heard a noise. It was faint at first, like something scraping the metal walls of the freezer. I froze, listening. The sound came again, louder, like someone or something was trying to claw its way out of the walls. My stomach dropped, and the silence felt oppressive. The air seemed heavier, colder. Then, out of nowhere, the light started flickering. At first, I thought it was just an electrical issue, but then I realized something was very wrong. The bulb overhead was flickering in a strange rhythm, like it was pulsing with something unseen. And that's when I felt it, a presence. It was like someone was standing just behind me watching. I started to sweat despite the cold. Slowly, I turned around and I swear I saw a shadow. It was tall, dark, and lurking behind one of the shelves. "Who's there?" my voice cracked. No answer. I tried to move toward the door, but before I could take a step, I felt a hard shove. Not just a light nudge, it was a forceful push that sent me crashing into one of the shelves. It happened so fast, I didn't even have time to think. I hit the floor, the cold seeping into me, and at that moment, the light went out completely. I was left in total darkness, my breathing shallow, my heart racing. The hum of the fans felt distant, like the freezer was closing in around me. That's when the vision started. I saw the meat hanging from the hooks begin to sway, slowly at first, then faster, like someone was pushing them. But that wasn't the worst part. As I stared, I began to see faces in the meat. Not human faces I recognized. Twisted, sunken eyes and pale skin. I tried to get up, but it was like something was holding me down, keeping me on the icy floor. Then the scraping started again, louder and closer this time. One of the shelves began to shake on its own, the sound piercing through the darkness. The shadow I had seen before seemed to be moving. It was getting closer. I felt pressure in my chest, like something was trying to suffocate me. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. The air was thick, almost unbearable. Then I heard it, a voice. It was low, a whisper, but it was inside my head. You shouldn't be here. Man, the fear that washed over me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. I crawled toward the door, desperately searching for the latch. My hands were shaking so much I could barely grip the handle. Finally, I managed to unlock the door and stumbled out of the freezer, collapsing onto the butcher shop floor. The lights in the hallway seemed blinding after the darkness inside. I lay there, panting, trying to process what had just happened. When I looked back at the freezer door, it was slightly ajar, and for a split second, I swear I saw the shadow standing inside, just watching. Then it vanished. After that night, I never went into the freezer alone again. I asked the manager to make sure someone was always with me if I needed to go in there. And to this day, every time I walk past the butcher section late at night, I get this chill down my spine, like whatever pushed me is still in there, waiting. I don't know what it was, but one thing I know for sure, that Walmart freezer will never feel the same to me again.
Story 4. Trapped Among Spirits.
My name is Mike, I'm 32, and I work as a security guard at Walmart in Akron, Ohio. I've always been a laid-back guy, never really believed in ghost stories or anything like that. To me, if you can't see it, there's nothing to fear. I live in a quiet neighborhood just a few minutes from the store, so I usually take the night shift. It's calm, barely any trouble. But that night changed everything. It was a regular Tuesday. The store had been pretty slow all day, just a few customers here and there, and by 10 p.m. the doors were locked. It was just me and Jake, the other security guard. He mostly stayed up front, while I did the rounds inside. Walmart at night is eerily quiet, you know? The echo of my footsteps down those empty aisles always made me feel like I wasn't really alone. But that night, something felt off. It started when I was making my way past the dairy section. The lights flickered for a second. Nothing big, I even joked to myself that it was Jake messing with me. I kept walking, and that's when I heard it. A soft moan. I froze. It sounded like someone was in pain, a low, eerie sound coming from somewhere deep in the store. I called out to Jake on the radio, but nothing. The radio was dead, like it had lost signal or something. I tried again. Nothing. That's when my heart started racing. But still, it could have been anything, right? I walked to the back of the store, near the freezers. That's the darkest, coldest part of the place, and the silence there was thick. Then I saw it. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but no. In the reflection of the freezer glass, I saw a woman. She was standing right behind me. She was wearing white, her hair all messed up, and she wasn't moving. I couldn't move. I didn't even turn around to look at her directly. I just saw her in the reflection. She was staring right at me through the glass, and I was frozen in place. My head started spinning. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't. My feet felt glued to the floor. That's when she started moving. But it wasn't normal. She was gliding across the floor without making a sound, like she wasn't really touching the ground. The moaning got louder, like it was coming from inside my head. She stopped right next to me, and I could feel her there, like the air around me got heavier. But the worst part? I saw something else in the reflection. She wasn't alone. Behind her, there were more figures, men and women, all with faces twisted in pain, like they were suffering. And there were more and more of them. Each time I blinked, another one appeared. I couldn't move. Time felt like it had stopped. I was just standing there, watching these figures get closer. They didn't make any sound except for that awful moaning, and with every step they took, my chest tightened like I couldn't breathe. Cold sweat started dripping down my back. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all, but it was impossible. It was like I was stuck in a nightmare. The woman stopped in front of me. Now I could see her face clearly in the glass. She was pale, with deep sunken eyes, like she'd crawled out of a grave. She reached out her hand towards me, and at that moment, I felt something touch my shoulder. I swear my whole body froze. It wasn't a physical touch, though. It was more like a pressure, an invisible force pulling me deeper into that store. I felt like if I didn't leave, I'd never get out. Then out of nowhere, the lights flickered back to normal, and the sound stopped. The figures were gone, just like that. I was still standing there, paralyzed, but now more out of shock than anything else. It took me a few minutes to get control of my legs again, and I ran straight to the front. When I found Jake, he was just chilling, like nothing had happened. I asked him if he'd seen or heard anything, and he just laughed, thinking I was messing with him. But I knew what I saw. I didn't tell anyone, 'cause who would believe me, right? But since that night, work's never been the same. And every now and then, when the store is dead silent, I swear I can still hear that moaning, like those spirits are still there, waiting for something.
Story 5, The Haunted Store.
My name is Mike. I've been working as a stocker at Walmart in Kansas City for 5 years now. I always work the night shift when the store is closed. It's quieter, just me and a couple of other employees making sure the shelves are full for the next day. I've never been one to get scared easily, always grounded in reality. But what happened that night, it changed me forever. It was just a normal Monday, a slow night. The store had been closed for hours, and it was only me, Jack, who worked the beverage section, and Sarah, one of the cashiers. We rarely talked during the shift, each of us busy with our own tasks. Around midnight, I was in the stockroom organizing boxes when I noticed something strange in the air. A smell. It was like rot, like spoiled meat, but way stronger, enough to make my stomach turn. I thought it might be a problem with the freezer, maybe some spoiled product. I headed towards the walk-in freezer to check, but when I got there, the smell was gone. I opened the door, everything was fine inside. The smell had just disappeared, like it was never there. Weird, but I shrugged it off and went back to work. But when I turned around to leave, I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. There, in the aisle between the shelves, was a child. A boy, maybe around 10 years old, barefoot, wearing an old torn t-shirt. He was facing away from me, standing perfectly still, just staring ahead. My skin crawled. The store had been closed for hours. There was no way a kid could be there. I called out, "Hey kid, what are you doing here?" But he didn't answer. He didn't even move. I started walking towards him, but with each step I took, it felt like the aisle was stretching longer, like he was getting farther away. My heart started pounding. It was like I was stuck in some sort of twisted version of reality, where time and space didn't make sense. When I finally got close enough, he turned around. His face, I'll never forget it. His eyes were missing, just empty black holes, and his mouth, it was sewn shut with thick, dirty thread. A chill ran down my spine like nothing I'd ever felt before. Pure terror. I couldn't move, and no matter how much I wanted to run, my body was frozen in place. He didn't make a sound, didn't say a word, just stood there staring at me for what felt like hours, but must have only been seconds. Then, without moving his feet, the boy started to slide away, disappearing down the aisle into the darkness. My body finally unlocked, and I bolted. I ran faster than I ever had to the front of the store where Sarah was. When I got there, she was pale, staring blankly at the cash register monitor. I asked if she'd seen anything, and with wide eyes, she whispered, "A woman." I saw a woman standing here, holding a dead baby in her arms. Fear gripped me. I knew whatever this was, it wasn't just happening to me. Sarah started crying, shaking, saying the woman had whispered her name over and over before vanishing. I tried to calm her down, but I was terrified myself. That's when Jack came running over, out of breath, saying someone had locked him in the stockroom. He swore he saw hands crawling along the walls, sticky and trying to grab him. That smell of rot came back, stronger than before, filling the store. It was like the air had become thick, harder to breathe. The feeling that something was watching us, surrounding us, was unbearable. We knew we had to get out of there. Without thinking twice, we ran for the exit, but it felt like something was stopping us. The automatic doors wouldn't open, like we were trapped in there with those things. That's when I heard a low laugh, almost like a whisper, coming from the back of the store. It echoed, like it was everywhere at once. I don't know how, but we managed to force open one of the emergency exits and bolted into the parking lot, not daring to look back. Ever since that night, none of us have been able to go back for the night shift. I transferred to the day shift, just like Jack and Sarah. I don't know what we encountered that night, but I'm sure that Walmart is hiding something dark, something we were never meant to see. And even now, when I pass by that Walmart at night, I can still smell that stench in the air.